Tonight we're talking about faith. And I'm like, I don't think any of us can fully imagine what God is really going to do in the hearts and lives of people tonight. And so I'm excited for this. I've got a couple family here. They hang out with me during this week. I've got two that are coming next week. But and I'm not going to embarrass her, but just saying her name usually embarrasses her because I'm that weird guy. My wife, Christina, is somewhere in this room. She has fans. Oh, yep, there she is. All right. That's all I'm going to do. That's all I'm going to do because I fear for my life. All right. And I have a daughter in here. I think she's at camp this week. Okay. All right, good. You're safe. All right, because I haven't seen you at all today. I'll take that as a good sign that she's like, I'm good. I've got my friends, Dad. Sheesh. All right. Hopefully she still thinks I'm cool sometimes, all right? But I'm going to try not to embarrass her either, although I could and talk about her because she's awesome. But yeah, let's go with this. We're going to talk about faith tonight. And I think we a lot of times have the same problem that they had in the Bible. They would always talk about what God did in the past. Or they would always, and they talk about with such reverence, and we should be excited about what God did. But what I believe and what many of your leaders and youth staff and everybody in here also believe is that as good as the past was, the best is still in front of us. That would be very depressing if the best part of your life was already over. And a lot of times we have a camp experience and we talk about, and I've heard some of you guys talk about your camp experience, and I love it. I eat it up. It's amazing. But we talk about it like that's as good as it's gonna get. And I'm like, hey, that's a foundation. Man, God is gonna do so much more. The best is still yet to come. I believe that. That's faith. You know, in the book of Isaiah, and we're going to be looking at Isaiah tonight too, and really a lot of the theme for this camp and a lot of what God's been dealing with, I keep on finding myself jumping back into the book of Isaiah. He was a prophet. He prophesied a lot of things. He prophesied about Jesus coming hundreds of years before it ever happened, and things like that. But there's one part in the book, in Isaiah 43, God is speaking to Isaiah to tell the people these things. And God goes on this list in Isaiah chapter 43. He goes through this list of, man, do you remember all the things that I've done? And God talks about parting the waters, and all the people are like, yeah, we talk about that all the time. My great-great-great-grandmother was, like, it was incredible. We talk about it's amazing. Yeah, and then I destroyed all of Pharaoh's army. Yeah, we celebrate that every year. It's awesome. And then I gave manna to you to eat in the wilderness, and nobody even knows what that is. And they're like, yeah, it was great, man. It was probably the best thing they ever had. And then I took you into the promised land, and yeah, we celebrate all the time over that. They kept on looking back like that was the greatest day ever, and nothing is ever going to be as good as that. And we do that a lot. And I love how God responds in that moment. God says, forget about all of that. And they're like, huh? Seriously? God's like, forget about all of that, because I'm about to do something new. See, it's already begun. And I believe that's not just a word for the people in this time, but that's a word for us to not get caught looking back. We can look back and celebrate and share about what God has done, but let me tell you something. The best is yet to come. God is doing something brand new, and it's already begun. There's a revival that is already taking place, and you guys are a part of it, and it's incredible, and I love it. I love that I just get to be a small part of it. But this week, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're really going after. And so for that to really occur, for that to continue, for that to be life-changing, it's going to require some faith on our part. And let me tell you something else. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the end here real quick. I'm going to tell you where we're going to land, just because I feel prompted, like, to tell you this. You guys are built different. You are. I know people say that about your generation a lot. Like, man, that generation's just built different. And it's always something negative that follows that every time. It's always something negative. And this is why I say you guys are built different. Because I believe that God has built this generation and put something in this generation to face the very things that you are facing right now that no other generation was equipped to face. You guys are built different. You guys are built to challenge a confused culture and clarify what God has really said. You guys are built different. You guys are built strong enough to handle the things that are being thrown at you. You guys are built different. I believe that about this generation. I have faith in God 100%, but I also have faith in you. You're built different. But you got to believe that too. You got to have faith in that too. So let's look at the Bible here. Luke chapter 8. We're going to pick up in verse 41 and 42. And it says, then a man named Jairus, a leader of the local synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come home with him. His only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying. As Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds. And we're going to jump down to verse 49. It says, a messenger arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. He told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. But when Jesus heard what had happened, he said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just have faith, and she will be healed. When they arrived at the house, Jesus wouldn't let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, James, and the little girl's father and mother. The house was filled with people weeping and wailing, but he said, stop the weeping. She isn't dead, she's only asleep. But the crowd laughed at him because they all knew she had died. Then Jesus took her by the hand and said in a loud voice, my child, get up. And at that moment, her life returned, and she immediately stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. If you're taking notes, I want you to title them this: Dead or Dormant. Dead or dormant. Like I said, I want to talk about faith tonight. I want to talk about what we believe and what we do about it. See, you should have to tell people what you believe. And even when you do, it doesn't mean that that's what they actually think or that's what they actually believe. Your choices will let everyone know this is what I believe. If you have faith, your choices will reflect that. So let's pray tonight. God, I thank you for this time. Lord, I pray you bless this word, bless our time together. It's going to be quick. We're going to move fast through this because, God, there's a work that you want to do in the life of every single person in this place. God, I pray tonight would be a faith-building and growing night in Jesus' name. And everybody said, Amen. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you all worn out from worship and stuff? Like, that first song dropped, and man, you could have ripped the roof off of this place. I was getting a little nervous. So I still smell the presence of the Lord and you, all right? Or some of you, deodorant. All right, that's all I'm going to say. All right, deodorant. All right, let's invest. Okay. I'm going to start off talking about grass. All right, that's so exciting. I know. It's about 15 years ago, my wife and I, we were purchasing our first house in Alabama. And so I'm from Ohio. She's from North Carolina. So we moved down here to be the youth pastors at a church. And so we were like, well, we've been looking for houses, can't find anything. So we decided, hey, we're just going to build a house. So we picked this lot, and we picked the type of house, and boom, they're going to take that house, put it on that lot, done. And so we got to watch the process, and I remembered about February, they're putting up the walls and stuff, and then later on in February, I remember when the truck of sod came and put all the sod down, and man, it was so green and awesome. It looked amazing. And I remember closing on the house, and we had to hurry and get everything in because I was about to go out of the country on a mission trip. I was going to be gone for 10 days. And so we get everything in there, and I go on the trip, and I come back, get back late at night. And my wife has already put like everything away because she's awesome. And then I get up the next morning to go to church. And as I'm backing out of the driveway, I noticed something about my house. My grass is brown and ugly, and it's dead. 2 weeks ago, it was green and lush and beautiful, okay? And I was like, this got to be wrong. So the limit of my ability with grass, so I pull back in the driveway, I run up, get the hose, put the sprinkler on it, boom, let it run. Sunlight, sprinkler, what else do you need, grass? All right, just do it. And so I leave, I go to church, and I'm mad because we just spent a ton of money on a house. For those of you that adulting is a thing, you know that like that's a lot of money. And I was like, this thing should look new still. Why doesn't it look new? It's dead. And so I called the guy who built the house. I said, hey man, there's something wrong with your grass. And he's like, huh? I said, it's dead. And he's like, are you sure? I know what dead grass looks like. I'm pretty sure. And so he comes to the house and everything. And so we talk. And I'll never forget the conversation we had. He was very gracious with me. I'm from the Midwest. We don't see our grass in the winter. It's just white, okay? And so not a lot of experience with the winter version of grass here. And so he explains to me, Kris, it's not dead, it's just dormant. He said when we get a harsh winter, and it was, we get one of those, he said the grass goes into this dormant state. You're not gonna see a lot of growth or anything like that. It's what it does. But when the season changes and the weather warms back up and the sun starts shining and the rain starts falling, I promise it's going to come back green and it's going to grow and you're going to get annoyed because you have to cut this all the time. And I was like, cool, I got it. I still don't believe you, but I got it. I think you're just trying to sucker me here. But let me tell you again what he said. Let me give you the short version of this. In fact, everybody close your eyes because I want you to picture this. I want you to put yourself there. Close your eyes. This is what he said to me. He said, it's not dead, but it's dormant. He said, the season that we're in right now is harsh, so you're not going to see a whole lot of growth in this season, at least not noticeable growth. In fact, at times, it may even look bad. It will appear like it's not going well. However, when the season changes, the appearance will change and growth will happen. All right, open your eyes. Tell the truth. For a minute, you forgot I was talking about grass, didn't you? Because that's where many of you find yourselves right now. And so I want to tell you, it's not dead, it's dormant. It's dormant. And Jesus has come into this place tonight. His Holy Spirit is here. And I believe he's going to speak a better word. And it's going to wake up some of these dormant things. Some of these spiritual gifts that some of you guys have been asking for and praying for. Some of the breakthrough, some of the freedom, some of the healing that you've been asking for tonight in this place is going to begin and it's going to happen. I believe that tonight. Once again, we're talking about faith. Here's what we mean when we're talking about dormant. I think we're going to put it up on the screen. There we go. Dormant. It's not currently showing signs of life or activity or a squeaky stage. All right. Such as feeling or power. It's as though it's sleeping. Here's my favorite part of the dormant definition. It's not active, but it's capable of becoming active. I love that. It's not active, but it's capable of becoming active. It's capable of becoming powerful. It's capable of producing feeling. Because here's what I know. Many of you have come to camp, and some of you, you're on a spiritual high right now. Man, God is just doing some amazing things in your life. And let me tell you something. There's a whole new level that God wants to take you to this week, and it's going to be amazing. In fact, God's not just going to do a work in you. He's actually going to do a work through you for your friends, for your family, everyone, and it's going to be incredible. Some of you have come to camp this week, and you experienced God before, but it just seems like, man, it's really hard to get in God's presence right now. It's really hard to hear from God right now. In fact, I'm not even sure if he's listening. I'm not sure if I ever had a real experience or not. It's a struggle right now. You're in a difficult season, just like the one that we talked about with the grass. It's challenging. Some of you, you're like, I've never had a relationship with God. I just came to camp because that girl was cute, or because everybody keeps talking about how crazy and fun it is, so I decided to come check it out. That's awesome. That may be why you came, but that's not why God has you here. In fact, whatever reason got you here, that's great. God can use anything, but you're here for a reason. God's going to do some amazing things this week. I believe it. Once again, we're talking about faith. And some of you in here, man, maybe you wonder, man, did God change his mind? Did I do something? Did I not do something? Has God changed his mind? And the enemy loves to swoop in those moments. Because the enemy loves to do one thing more than anything else. He loves to proclaim death over your calling, your life, your ministry, your future. He loves to just proclaim death over it. And you know what? You feel like he may have a good case because you're like, I don't feel anything. It's not this relationship that everybody talks about is not powerful. I don't feel anything. The enemy loves to proclaim death over it, but here's the thing. He doesn't get the final say. He doesn't get the final say. The calling and plans of God are not dead. The gifts of God are not dead. But let me tell you something. They may be dormant in your life right now. Maybe because you never knew or expected it. You don't have a relationship with God. That can change this night. It may be a season that you're going through. And God takes us through seasons, and they're challenging, but he's teaching us and showing us and growing us in those seasons. Even when, like the grass, you may not see a whole lot of growth, but it's there. Or maybe it's dormant because of choices that you've made. And things that you said yes to that you shouldn't have, and things that you said no to that you should have. Maybe that's why some things are dormant in your life. But I want you to remember, when something is dormant, it may not be active in the moment, but it's capable of being active. And I believe tonight is that night. So let's go back to Luke chapter 8. This dad comes to Jesus because his child is very sick. He's his only child, and he's desperate for a miracle. He's on the way there, and he's told two things by this messenger. She's dead, and don't bother Jesus with it anymore. It's just like the enemy to send a message to tell you something is dead when it's not, and to not bother Jesus. Because the enemy knows when you get Jesus involved, things begin to change. Things start to look a little bit different. And so when Jesus hears this, he knows what's going on in this guy. And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to say three things to him. And it's three things that he doesn't just say to that guy, but he's saying them to us right now. He's probably been saying it in your life over and over again, but he's going to repeat it over and over again this week. You're going to hear it a lot. Here's the first one. Don't be afraid. Here's the second one. Have faith. And then the third one. She will be healed. And I believe that's a word. It may be one of them. It may be two of them. It may be all three. But that's a word for you tonight. Don't be afraid. Some of you are so wrapped up in fear right now. You're afraid of what God is going to do. Some of you, let's be honest, you're afraid of what God's not going to do. What if he does it? You're so afraid. You're wrapped up in fear. Jesus says, don't be afraid. The second thing Jesus says is have faith. You got to trust me. Have faith. And then the third thing, it may sound different to you. It may not be she will be healed. It may be he will be healed, or they will be healed, or you will be set free, or it will finally be broken, or it's going to change, or the season will come to pass. Whatever it is, this is a word for us tonight. And with two of those things, Jesus is speaking to the dad's feelings. Because we put a lot of stock in feelings, right? Put a whole lot of stock in how we're feeling, but our feelings deceive us so often. They're so deceptive, and it's why anxiety and depression and suicide are so powerful. They're all about feelings. I've talked to several people in my life who have actually attempted suicide, thankfully survived, and they share their story about it, and I've read from other people, and all of them say the same thing. The moment that I committed the act that would end my life, I immediately knew I made the wrong decision. And when they're asked why, they all tell you the same thing. They said, I didn't want my life to end. I wanted the pain to end. I wanted the feeling to stop. I didn't want my life to be over. And now they're so thankful that God spared them from that. But feelings are a powerful thing. And so Jesus speaks directly to the man's feelings. Don't be afraid. Have faith. And some of you need to say that to yourself. The dad needed to hear Jesus say these things to him because this wasn't just his little girl. Remember, this is his only child. And in this culture, having children meant that God had blessed you. Having children was looked at as a gift from God. If you didn't have children, you were looked at like, man, I guess God's not blessing your life. There must be something wrong with you. Having children in this culture was, these are the people that are going to take care of you when you're old and done. And this is his only child. So it's a gift from God. It's all these things. So it wasn't just his child laying there. That's not just who's laying there. His gift from God is laying there. The promise that God made to him is laying there. His future is laying there. His joy from seeing his child is laying there. And he's wondering, God, is this it? Is it over? What have I done? What did I do? What did I not do? If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. This is our main point here. Faith resurrects the dormant things in your life. Faith will resurrect the dormant things in your life. So I'm going to give you 3 reminders about faith tonight that resurrect dormant things. These are the actions that tell others what we believe. All right? I'm going to go back to what the messenger told the dad and Jesus. She's dead, don't bother the master. Anybody ever said that to somebody before? Excuse me, I don't want to bother you, but anybody? All right, are you those people? Some of you are like, heck no, I just bother them. Okay, all right. I've looked at people and I'm like, hey, I don't want to bother you, or I don't want to be a bother. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to bother with it. We have a bother problem. Okay, we really do. We have a bother problem. And when the messenger said not to bother the master because the girl was dead, Jesus responds with, don't be afraid and have faith, because the problem shouldn't bother the man's faith. His faith should actually bother the problem. His faith should actually amaze this messenger that comes to tell him something. So here's the first reminder that you get tonight. My faith should bother my problems. Oftentimes, it's the other way around. We'll say, I have faith, and then a storm happens or something comes our way, and it's like, no, I have problems. Your faith should be bothering your problems. Your faith should annoy the mess out of the enemy. He should get so sick and tired of you. Like, man, every time I throw something else at him, they always just throw Jesus back. Like, this is ridiculous. Your faith should bother every single problem that you have. Your faith should annoy everyone around you that just knows stuff. They should get tired of telling you things like, well, they're just going to put faith on it, so I might as well not try to ruin their day, all right? Your faith should be a problem for your problems. Too often, it's the other way around. We will have faith, but when the storm comes, and it will, it shakes our faith because we get so focused on our feelings from the problem. This dad is told it's hopeless, so don't bother Jesus. Let me tell you, if there's anyone I'm running to when it's hopeless, it's Jesus. And that's the last person that Satan wants you to run to. The last thing he wants you to do tonight is come down to an altar, find somebody to pray with you, and take it straight to Jesus. He's horrified of that. I'm reminded of what the man told me about my grass. He said, it's not dead. It's just a tough season right now. It'll change. And I struggle with it because I was like, well, dude, I'm not from here. I don't know that. He's like, man, I've seen it before, and this is what I do for a living. I believe Jesus would say the same thing. He would say, hey, guys, you're not from where I'm from. I've seen this before, and it's what I came here to do, to wake up the dormant things in your life because I have so much more in store for you. Here's the second reminder about faith that resurrects dormant things. Never let what you know affect what you believe. Never let what you know affect what you believe. When Jesus goes to the house, all the people from the town are gathered there and they're weeping and they're crying. All right, it's a very sad scene. And Jesus says, hey guys, calm down. She's not dead, she's just sleeping. And in Luke chapter 8, verse 53, it says, but the crowd laughed at him because, here it is, they all knew. Say that with me, they all knew. They all knew she had died. They just knew it. The crowd's like, oh, bless your heart, Jesus. That's a southern thing that I have discovered living down here. That's like the southern hospitable way of saying you're an idiot, okay? And I'm not going to ask if anybody's ever told you bless your heart, all right? But that's what they do. They laugh at Jesus. Bless your heart, Jesus, you're so cute. They said, Jesus, we've been here for a while, and we just know she's dead. And let me explain this, and this is probably going to come up in your small groups later, so small group leaders, you're welcome. What we know is always in the natural. It's what we can see, what we can touch, what we can smell. That's what we know, all right? It's in the realm that we call the natural. It's the natural world, all right? Things are logical, they make sense, all right? We know things that are in the natural. But by faith, we choose a greater report. I'm choosing to believe in what Jesus is able to do. Don't let what you know affect what you believe. Let me give you an example of this. Oh, the doctors came in and just said it's cancer. They just know that it's cancer. But we believe that Jesus can heal people. Let me make it real personal for some of you. Your parents may come to you and say, we just know our marriage is over, but we believe in a God who puts broken things back together again. Maybe for you, the odds would say, man, I just know I'm not going to get that scholarship. I know I'm not going to get that job. I know that's not going to happen for me, and all of those things. But we believe that Jesus makes a way where there is no way. We have faith. We believe. Paul talks about this in 2 Corinthians 4:18. You can look that up later. He says you can't trust your physical vision. He says you can't do it. You can't trust it. You can't make your decisions based off of what you just simply see. You need more. And Paul goes on to explain, look, there is a spiritual realm where a war is taking place all around you right now. Let me tell you something. This whole campground, this whole place has become one of the biggest spiritual battlefields every single year that we come here. All right, because there is a war taking place for your attention. There's a war taking place for your calling, for your soul, for your life, for your thoughts. There is a war going on. And when you begin to look through the eyes of faith, you can actually begin to see and notice, oh, that thing is coming against me. It's not because I suck, and it's not because life is bad, and because life is hard, or because God's mad at me. The enemy is trying to mess up something, but he done messed up, because him coming against me actually lets me know that God is going to do something bigger and better than I could possibly imagine. He just showed his cards. So hey, if you've had a rough day, if you've been facing some things over this last couple weeks, if you came within an inch of not coming to camp, it's because the enemy has already known, man, if they go, something big's gonna happen, and it's gonna mess up the plan that I have to ruin their life, and now everything's just gonna fall apart around me, all right? He knows it. He knows it. By faith, we believe that. So by faith, when we look through the lens of faith, not only can we see what's coming against us, but we can also see what God is doing for us. We can't see what's always happening in the spiritual realm, but we have faith. It says they knew she had died. And we get really good at telling God what we know, don't we? God, I just know this will never end. God, I just know I'm not going to stop feeling this way. God, I just know that they're going to say no, and all these other things. I believe when Jesus shows up at these people's house and they started to tell him everything that they know she's dead, they know she's been sick, they know this isn't going to happen. I believe Jesus wanted to look at them and say, hey, stop telling me what you know. Why don't you tell me what you believe? Hey, the next time somebody starts complaining to you and letting you know all the things that are coming against you, all right, and they just tell you what they know, when you've heard from God, you need to stop them and say, hang on. I've heard from God. His word has backed it up. Let me tell you what I believe. The next time the enemy comes against you and says, hey, all this bad stuff is happening to you because you suck or life is bad and God doesn't care about you, say, look, I know a lot of bad things are going on right now, but I believe that Jesus is going to make a way where there is no way, and there's nothing you, Satan, can do about any of it. That's faith. We need to do a lot less speaking what we know and begin to say, this is what I believe. And you may be sitting in here saying, KB, I need help with that, man. All right, well, I'm going to give you some help, and it's actually reminder number 3. All right, and this applies here at camp, but probably even more so when you get back home. Here's number 3, all right, for a move of God, for a faith that wakes up dormant things. When you need a move of God, don't bring the critics in. When you need a move of God, don't bring the critics in. If you go back to the story here, Jesus only allows 3 of his disciples and the parents to come in. All right, here's why. Let me pause right there. Many of you struggle with faith right now because you've let the wrong people in to have influence in your life. I didn't say you shouldn't have all kinds of friends. You should. We should love people. Absolutely. But who has the influence in your life? Some of you have allowed the critics in. Many of you have faithful friends, but what you need are faith-filled friends. A faithful friend is that person, man, they're that ride or die person. They've been with you a long time. You guys have been through some things, all right? They've been with you. They go everywhere, all right? A faithful friend is always by your side, even when they shouldn't be. But a faith-filled friend will tell you the truth even when it's not easy for you to hear it or easy for them to say it. but they will also believe with you and hold you up when everyone else leaves. That's a faith-filled friend. And some of you need to get some friends like that because you've been hanging out with the friends that they have here in this story. They're all faithful friends, but they're not faith-filled. Some of you, that thing in your life is still dormant. It's still asleep because you let the critics crush your faith. It's time we begin to shut the critics up. And so Jesus, he says, hey, in verse 51, you know what? I'm only bringing in these three and the mom and dad. And there's a reason for that. Those three disciples, they were part of his core. And they believed in that Jesus could do anything more than anyone else. And he brings mom and dad in. Why? Because more than even the disciples, these two people wanted to see Jesus do this miracle more than anyone. So that's who he brings into the room. And so this week, our hope is that you will find leaders and friends who will not just be faithful, but they will be faith-filled. Then, when it looks bad and everyone is quick to tell you what they know, you have some faith-filled friends that will back you up and say, but this is what we believe. And real quick, here's what I didn't say. And worship team, you guys go ahead and get ready. Here's what I didn't say. I didn't say every critic who speaks to you is someone that you should look at and say, get behind me, Satan. That's not what I said. Because some of us, we need a critical voice in our life to tell us the truth about ourselves. Here's how you know if it's a critic that you should listen to or not. Begin to ask yourself, what will they get out of this? Because a person who should be able to speak into your life and maybe even say some difficult things, guess what? They're not getting anything out of it. They're just obeying what God has told them to do. You're the one that will reap the benefit from it. A person who's critical that will crush your faith, they will say critical things because they are worried that if you change, they're going to have to. If you change and you begin to believe, it changes your relationship. They lose the leverage that they have in your life. If you decide, I'm going to start being in church, in fact, I'm going to start serving in church, I'm going to stop going all these other crazy places, and I'm going to honor God, that means they're either going to have to go do all the crazy, stupid things alone, or they're going to have to come with you to church. So rather than do that, they said, I will just be critical and keep them where I am. We need to dump some of the critical relationships that we have. So let's recap. A faith that resurrects dormant things in your life. It should bother your problems. It doesn't let what you know affect what you believe. And it leaves the critics outside. Last thing. Because the message is called dead or dormant. We've talked a lot about the dormant things. And I believe tonight God's going to speak a word to you and it's going to wake some of those things up. And some of you are going to realize that God put something in you a long time ago and you never even knew it. But now we got to talk about the dead. There are some things in our lives, some situations, some relationships maybe, some practices, some beliefs, some habits. There are some things in our lives that need to be dead, but to be honest, and if we're really honest, we keep them on life support. We've asked God to give us new life, but we refuse to bury the old one. And some of you, when I said that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And for you, maybe we can name all the popular things, but I think there's even more out there. We talk about pornography. We can talk about that relationship that every time you get close to God, that relationship falls apart. And then when you repair the relationship, your relationship with God begins to fall apart. And it just goes back and forth and back and forth. Why? Because you refuse to bury the relationship. When you're close to God, you're far from them. When you're close to them, you're far from God. It's time we put that relationship in the ground. When someone dies, we bury them 6 feet under the ground. In a concrete vault, we don't leave them in our living room decomposing. We don't stash them under our bed or in the back of the closet or in a locked file on our computer or our phone. You bury things that are dead. You hide things that should be but are not. The definition of burying something is simply this: to completely cover, cause to disappear, and here's my favorite part, to defeat overwhelmingly. But to hide something is to put it out of sight or to conceal it from the view or notice of others. For many of you, God seems silent, or your relationship with him seems powerless, or it used to be amazing and now it's not, simply because there's some things that should be dead and buried that you've allowed to stay in your life. And they may not be real active right now, but once that storm comes, it's like you know it's there as a safety net to fall back on. And Jesus says, you don't need that, you need me. You don't need that, you need me. One last scripture here in Isaiah chapter 6. We're going to start in the second part of verse 1. It says, I saw the Lord. He was sitting on a lofty throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Attending him were mighty seraphim, each having 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. They were calling out to each other, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of heaven's armies. The whole earth is filled with his glory. Their voices shook the temple to its foundations, and the entire building was filled with smoke. This is what Isaiah saw. And he had never seen anything like this. And then if you go down to verse 8, it says, the Lord asked, who am I going to send as my messenger? Who am I going to speak to share these words with other people? Who is going to go to the people for us? And Isaiah is jumping up and down, waving his hands, and he says, here I am, Lord, send me. Choose me, pick me. This is the commissioning of Isaiah to be the prophet to the nations, to be God's messenger. But I want us to go back to the very beginning of chapter 6 and verse 1, because I skipped a part. And this is what the very first half of verse 1 says. In the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. Now, we don't have time to go into this whole story. Uzziah, he was an okay king, but during his reign, he tried to take over some of the things that the priests were doing. And he also led a lot of people away from God. And so we're not going to get into all the reasons behind that, but here's what I want you to know. Isaiah loved Uzziah. But this is what he says in the year that King Uzziah died. He was really saying, man, in the year that everything seemed to fall apart, in the year that everything didn't seem to go my way, in the year that I was so frustrated, in the year that I felt like, man, where is God and why is he not speaking? In the year that things just became really challenging, it was in that year when something finally died that I saw the Lord. Hey, you want to know what's keeping you from hearing from God and seeing the Lord? What is it in your life that needs to go? What is it in your life that needs to be dead and buried? What is that thing? Every head bowed, every eye closed, all over this place. Once again, we're not saying that someone has to lose their life. That's not the point of this. But it was after that was finally gone. Hey, why are some of the gifts of God dormant in your life and at one time they were so active? Why is it that you struggle to hear from God when you so desperately want to? What is it that needs to be dead and buried? And for those of you tonight that have that handled, maybe you're saying, KB, I'm there at that first part. Man, it seems like those things are dormant and I need them to be active. God can speak a word to you tonight. And he can wake up those dormant things. And I believe that's what he has for us. Everyone, go ahead and stand to your feet all across this place. If I could ask, like nobody moving around, nobody shuffling. In fact, bow your head and close your eyes. Just it helps us stay focused in this moment. I'm getting ready to turn it over to the worship team. I'm going to ask for all of my leaders to go ahead and come down to the front or fill the walls on the side. This is what we're going to do. And I'm going to make you a promise before this. We're not going to do anything weird. It's not about to get weird in here because here's the thing. Weird is when we get involved. God doesn't do weird. He loves you. All right, so this isn't going to get weird. This isn't going to get awkward. It might get a little emotional, but it's not going to get weird. So we can leave that aside. Some of you tonight, I told you, faith is more than what we say. It's the actions and the choices that we make. Some of you, Satan has been working on you the entire time here. You're like, man, you don't need to go down. Man, what other people know what's going on in your life. No, you don't need to do that. My question to you is, aren't you tired of what God placed into you being dormant? Isn't it time for that thing to come alive again? Isn't it time for that to wake up? What you've been praying for, what you've been hoping for, isn't it time? It can begin to happen in this place tonight. All it takes is the smallest amount of faith. The faith that it takes to get out of your seat and make your way forward. That's what it takes. And for many of you in this place, what is it that finally needs to die? You've kept it on life support, and it has kept you from being in God's presence consistently. You've checked all the boxes. You show up at church. You serve. You do all the things. But still, it feels like there's a distance. What is that thing? That it's time for you to say, it's gone. Why? Because I want Him more than I want that. If that's you in this place tonight, these leaders want to pray with you. And it may just start with you coming down front, walking up to a leader, and you can say one of those things. You can either say dead or dormant, and they're going to know. Dead, all right? There's something in your life that needs to go. You can say dormant, all right? There's something in your life that needs to wake up. You can say both. And you can tell them what you're dealing with, or you can just allow them to pray for you, whatever it is. If you're nervous about coming down by yourself, hey, grab a faith-filled friend and bring them with you. And students, this is how much I trust you, and I don't normally do stuff like this. If you're in this place and you have a real relationship with God, and you feel like, man, God is calling me to go pray with one of my friends, I dare you. I dare you to say yes to God and watch what happens in them, but watch what happens in you. Don't be afraid. Have faith. God's about to do something amazing that only He can do. If that's you in this place, get out of your seat right now. Come find a leader. Hey, there we go. First one's already gone. You don't have to be the first one. Come on. Come find a leader. Come find a friend. These guys are going to lead us in some worship so that we can stay in this mindset. If you're staying at your seat, that's fine. You don't have to come down here. All I would ask is that you be respectful. And maybe God is dealing with you still and you're staying at your seat. This altar is open for the remainder of our time. Maybe you're waiting. That's fine. Hey, leader, if you don't have a student that you're praying with, but you know God is calling you to one, you march yourself out there. You go find that student, wrap your arms around them, and begin to believe for them.